I'm Johnny Smith.
I'm Richard Porter.
And this is Smith and Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars and many other things. Of course, Richard, things were vastly different in the 1960s. You see, I remember vividly, maybe 12 minutes before work, I'd run outside with a steaming hot cup of tea, place it on the roof of my Spitfire, and then I'd decoat the head, because that's the sort of thing you just did. And it just wasn't, it was routine, it was not a problem. 12 minutes before I leave for work, it's easy. I knew how to do it. I didn't even get my shirt dirty. It was lovely.
Would you be smoking a cigarette whilst rooting around in a leaky petrol engine?
But of course, in
the 60s.
You see, in the 60s, there was a lot of smoking, and we didn't know the dangers. And I smoked frequently. In fact, I smoked whilst eating my breakfast, and I smoked whilst brushing my teeth. Although, that said, I don't think I brushed my teeth in 67. I did in 68, though.
Yes. Brushing teeth was something else that was strictly optional in the 60s. I did used to smoke in the shower. When I had one installed. Before that, a bath once a week in the 60s.
It was a delightful time, a very different time from motoring.
It smelt awful, obviously. Our breath, our bodies.
Oh, it was lovely. We'd go and watch the motor racing, and for 12 pence, I'd be allowed into the pits. And once I got talking to a delightful man from Lotus, and we shared a cigarette while he was refuelling. And then he said, do you know...
Yes, I have.
He said, do you have any idea what these cars are like to drive? And I said, do you know, I don't. And he said, well, jolly well get the bugger in and give it a go. So I did. And it was lovely.
Do you have a helmet? Oh, don't worry about it. You won't be going far.
Fine. And once the racing was finished, we shared some drinks and we had a dance, and it was just delightful. And I remember the day after, I had to drive to Shropshire to see Mother, and I had to stop halfway to repair the sills on Fanny's car.
Just a little bit of welding. It only took me 2 cigarettes, so it wasn't very long.
I asked 2 men called Dickie and Roger, sweet guys, and they brazed the sills for Fanny, and we were on our way. And it was just delightful. I look back now, and it was delightful. So
a simpler time.
Different, lovely
times. A car couldn't complete a medium-sized journey without needing major remedial work.
And, you know,
I miss those days.
There was so much hair. Everybody had hair. And I remember, and lots of blue eyeshadow as well. It was so different in the 60s. And I remember that when the motorways opened, it was so quiet. In fact, I stopped in the middle of the motorway once and had a bloody picnic. It was that quiet. It was lovely. It was not dangerous. It was lovely. It was wonderful.
No central reservation in those days, of course.
No.
If one realised one was going the wrong direction, simply do a U-turn.
Oh, it was lovely. I'd go everywhere in my Spitfire with the roof down, and sometimes I'd bring the collie along. She was called Cunny. And we'd laugh, we'd look at one another. We just had the best time.
Of course, the collies are so intelligent as dogs. I trained mine to gap the spark plugs on my Spitfire. While smoking.
Yes. I think my friend's collie smoked, you know. I'm sure it did.
Yes. Died of lung cancer in the end, of course, because of all the smoking. It's not good for dogs, you know.
It's terrible for dogs. But I remember the winters. They were colder, but they were more friendly. And it was a lovely time.
Of course, we didn't have central heating. I just used to bring the Spitfire inside and leave it running.
Of course, I remember. I do remember that. Yes. I remember going on holiday, and I did 3 engine rebuilds and 900 miles, but it was so much fun. It was so delightful. I really, really look back at that time fondly. Lovely. Sweet times.
How have we got here?
I don't know. I just woke up. I was talking to myself in the shower. In the shower? Like that this morning, yes. And I think it's when I was when my dad, when I was down in Wiltshire at the weekend working on my 2CV, and I stayed with my mum and dad. We have a little chit-chat, obviously, here and there. And it was just that dad reminding me of selling a 3-year-old car that he poked a screwdriver through the sills on. And you're like, what? It was 3 years old. What? What's going on? It's a 36-month-old car that's rotten. How do you do that?
That's funny, because I was saying to someone last week that my mum had a Vauxhall Chevette in the early 80s, and I think it was a 77 car. 77 Chevette, 77. And it was already visibly rusty by the early 80s.
Was it?
So, yeah, 4-year-old car, I'd say, when there were, the front wings were just going through. And cars just don't really do that anymore. I mean, apart from that that era of Fords that were a bit rotty, the Cat and the Puma, and those terrible, what were they?
Mercedes.
210 E-Class, yeah.
Oh, they were so frilly.
So frilly. But even that, they sort of gave you fair warning, didn't they? There's the frills started at the edge of the arches. It wasn't like, I think Mum's Chevette, it went on the wing tops by the A-pillar. Suddenly just a hole appeared.
Oh my gosh, so properly rotten.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
In the end, we sold that car to a guy who came round and he was poking at the wings. I've mentioned this before. And I think my mum went, yes, obviously it's a little bit of rust there. And he went, oh, don't worry, I'm ripping these off. And he was going to turn it. Bear in mind, it was like a 1.3L. He was going to turn it into some kind of like HSR replica.
Oh, was he?
So he was going to, he was having the front wings off to put big flared arches on it and stuff. So he didn't give a shit about the fact the front wings were essentially made of all bran.
I think it's all of these stories that you might hear from your parents, your grandparents, aunties and uncles about bygone era motoring. It makes me realise that it's a miracle that we still have 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s cars left on the road.
That's true, yes.
You think some of them died within 5 years of being bought, and others are still here 60 years later.
It is a pretty amazing thing, isn't it? That there's not, along with the fact that it's amazing that anybody who ever drove or lived through the 60s is still alive, zooming about in these sort of flimsy cars with no seatbelts on, smoking 2 cigarettes at once, and you just go, wow, you made it through, well done.
It's so true. But we had the greatest of times, Richard. We just did. It was lovely.
But is this, joking aside, if we've talked about this, possibly not on the podcast, but in real life, about how old people don't look old anymore?
Well, I mean, we're both getting towards 50, you could say. And and if you thought back to when you were a 12, 13-year-old lad, like my son's near as damn it 13, and 50 was old, really old.
Oh yeah.
So I am aware of it. I'm slightly scared of it, but then I don't dwell on age. I just think about how you act. Act, Gary.
I mean, actually, maybe teenagers would look at us and think we're absolutely tragic because we're closing in on 50 and we're still wearing trainers and
they could do, couldn't they?
Hoodies and things. But it doesn't feel like that. I feel like when we were kids, a dad in his 50s would be wearing some comfortable slacks and some comfortable shoes,
Teflon
and a
coated
tucked-in
trousers.
shirt. I mean, there's a generation, and we're losing them now, but there's a generation that still will get up every morning, even in retirement, and put on a tie.
I know.
Possibly with a V-neck jumper. I mean, it's a hell of a look. Maybe it should come back. Maybe this is what...
Well, we should do it for one of our live tours.
What, a tie and a V-neck?
We should dress as a 70s dad. Or a 60s dad. Just see what happens.
Yeah, I think the real sort of old people, are like old ladies with blue hair.
Yeah.
And a particular kind of spectacles.
Yeah.
And cardigans and shawls and all sorts of things like that. You just sort of, I know older ladies now who are, they're still into like extreme cycling events and stuff like that. It's amazing, really. So maybe that's the big difference. Everyone who's made it through the 60s has gone, life is precious. I better start doing ultra marathons or something, even though I'm 81.
Yeah, and in my 20s, I was smoking 25 cigarettes a day, driving a Spitfire with no belts, and drinking probably a lot of units casually.
Every so often you'll get one of those news stories, and there'll be a lady who's turned 120, and they'll say, "What's your secret?" And she'll say something like, "Well, I have a pint of wine and one Benson and Hedges cigarette every day, and I have done for the last 85 years."
Like, yeah, and you shrug and you go, "Well, bloody hell."
All right, well,
ruddy
what's my secret? Well, bungee jumping and heroin. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Hey, yesterday morning I had an early start for a barn find, and it was a lovely day. I had a thoroughly enjoyable day, a long day, tiring. But as I observed a few things driving between here and Shropshire, and one of them was the appearance of what I thought was a blacked out ghetto driverless Audi.
Driverless?
It came up behind me, and then it overtook me, and I couldn't see anyone driving it. It was tinted at the back windows, and the side windows were mildly tinted, and it was a black car with a black interior with black number plates. It was just all black, like an A3. I thought it's a bit weird. So anyway, it sort of did that thing where people overtake you and then slow right down, which is always suspicious, I think.
Oh.
So yeah. I was just holding my pattern in the insight. And so I had to overtake him because he'd gone from 80 to 60, it seemed. Went to overtake quite slowly and looked across and this is the thing, I don't think I even saw the top of the steering wheel. I think the person was genuinely sat in the back seat. I didn't see a hand on a wheel. I didn't see a wheel. So I think, the rake of the wheel, they must have put it right down.
Yeah.
And they were so far back with the backrest reclined. I was just thinking, this person's either 7'6", they're an NBA star, and this is their stealth wealth car. Or there's just nobody in there. I don't know what, and somebody's controlling it via satellite. I just don't know what's going on. But it wasn't even a new A3. It was like a 12-year-old A3.
Oh.
Yeah, it freaked me right out.
How peculiar.
And I thought, how strange, Richard. I must bring this up in a conversation when I have a recording. And then I carried on, and I was following a Fiat 500 for a while. And a base model, Pop, or whatever they are. Pop. And then I realised that the tailpipe on a Fiat 500 non-Abarth is basically a USB-C socket.
Oh, yes.
It's just a giant USB-C.
Forgive my Fiat 500 nerdery, but I seem to remember that certainly in its original form, the 500 Pop didn't get that USB-C tailpipe because it's just a finisher.
It was
one of the ways they sort of punished you for having the base model. You don't get all the nice bits, the nice trinkets and things. So it just had a regular pipe.
Oh.
And you had to move up the range to get the USB-C.
Oh, you know more than I.
Now, funnily enough, my Panda has that USB-C finisher on it. It shouldn't. That's not a 100 horsepower Panda thing. But somebody at some point in that car's life has popped that finisher onto the pipe, and I've just left it because it looks all right. But you're right. It is a USB-C.
It's just
port,
huge.
Isn't it?
It is a giant USB-C. I just can't stop staring at it now that I've seen it for 20 minutes on this journey. And
you're absolutely right. I'm not my knowledge of the history of USB ports is not great, but was USB-C even a thing when that Fiat 500 came out? Because that is pretty much the oldest car on sale in Britain, isn't it? Apart from, now the Nissan GTR's gone, and the Tesla Model S isn't quite as old.
You've got a good point. I wonder if it is. That's nice, boring car trivia, that is. That's juicy.
I mean, mainstream car. I think, you're discounting like Caterhams and
Horatio Pagani's probably... Is Horatio Pagani still doing a special edition of the... I think it's so old I can't remember the name of it. The
Zonda.
The Zonda, yeah.
I think he can't help himself. He just loves making Zondas, and he keeps going, we've got the Huayra now, and we've got various variations. If you went to him and I'd like a Zonda, I bet he'd do you one.
Of course he would.
Because he just loves it. Well, as long as I can call it a special edition, knock yourself out.
He's just signed a huge contract. Jeff Goldblum's agreed to do it. It's called Jurassic Zondas. Incredibly old Zondas that just keep coming back. And you can go to a special racetrack to watch them all just doing what they want to do. They don't have to go around the same way. They can go different ways. They can drive across the grass if they want to. It's up to them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Might be a cinematic hit.
Horatio Pagani is so preoccupied with whether or not he could, he never stopped to think whether he should, or whatever that line is from the movie.
Jurassic Zonders.
That one. Jurassic Zonders. Now, hey, look,
Guys.
we should probably make a small announcement, which is that our next live shows are coming up, and coming up quite soon.
Oh, gosh.
In fact, on Thursday, the 6th of June, we are going back to the London Concourse in Leafy, London, where
very soon.
We were there last year at the Royal Artillery in the city. Beautiful venue.
It was an amazing venue, wasn't it?
And the London Concourse, I mean, it's hard to know where to begin with the sweet, sweet cars that are on display. And last year we did 2 nights of live shows. This year we are doing 2 shows, but a bit differently, because there's an auction going on in the hall where we do the show for the first 2 days of the event. And that leaves only Thursday the 6th free. So we're doing a matinee. So we're doing 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then 5 o'clock in the evening, 2 live shows. Tickets on sale now. Patrons have had this weekend to get their mitts on them, but there are still tickets available, we think. I don't know, recording this in the past. But
you're assuming that we're organised people.
I'm assuming it's not sold out. It's a reasonably roomy room, so plenty of tickets still on sale, I'm going to guess. But so 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Thursday the 6th of June at the London Concourse. And if you buy a ticket for our live show, it automatically gets you into the London Concourse, which goes on all day that day. So you can have a good wander around there.
So have a day there.
Make a day of it.
It's a lovely, lovely, sweet, exquisite event.
It's we had a lovely time last year, didn't we? Because it's such a beautiful venue and it's a good room, and it's a nice space in which we did the live show. So we're doing it all again on the 6th of June. Get your tickets now.
What's good about it is, in terms of the event, like the car show, is there's a lot of exotica, obviously, but just in a part of London where you just think, how has this real estate even been preserved?
It's mind-boggling,
and
isn't
plus, it's not too busy, so it wasn't heaving with people, so it felt quite relaxing, which I like. It's set
all the right
cricket
crowd
ball,
and no
it?
criding, as they used to say about, I think, Goodwood was that? Anyway,
all the right crowd and no crowding.
It's lovely. But yes, that whole area, the Royal Artillery facility, is bang slap in the city, and you can see all the big shiny mirrored tower blocks and things. And you just think, in fact, if you go, put your foot on any patch of ground and then think, my foot is resting on £1 million here.
Yeah.
Because if they wanted to build a building there, the value of that land is quite extraordinary. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Live show, 6th of June, 2 shows, 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Come along.
Please do. Thank you. We love you, by the way, and if you've been to one of our other shows, we're so appreciative, because we know some people, you mad people, have been to multiple shows, so that's just, that's just fool's play.
I'm looking at my diary as well, and I realised that the day after the live show, when I'm probably doing 2 shows in a day, and a bit of wandering around the concourse and stuff, I'm going to be quite tired, and I realise the following day I've got to go camping with my children. So
have you?
It's going to be nice.
Right.
Yay. You know how much I love camping.
It's prep. It's absolute prep is everything. Prep for all of the seasons and all of the eventualities. Put everything in.
Anyway.
I'm making it sound like I'm organised, and I'm really not, but...
Yeah, I was going to say, hark at Sherpa tensing here.
What, Captain didn't bring his own bedding to a camping trip last year? I still feel like...
And so, we make it to the summit of Everest. Has anyone got my coat? Oh, shit, I must have left it at base camp.
I know, I was such a fool. I felt like my son just looked me up and down. He went... So you asked everybody to bring this and that, and you haven't got anything to sleep with? And I went, no.
No.
Luckily, it's really warm. So,
okay. Well, we've done the little promo there for the live show. Can I now invite you to stroll over to Book Corner? Because I've got a couple of things to mention. The first one is we had a message from a listener called Alistair Ellen. He says, I thought you might be interested in a book that's currently in production. It's called A Time, a Place. It contains photographs of every European car of the year from 1964 to 1984, paired with a building of the same year. It's currently being crowdfunded and needs a bit more support.
Really?
So this is and it's a really cool idea. So it's being done by the Modernist Society in Manchester. And they need 10 grand to get this book printed, because I'm assuming they're going to do a really nice job on it. It's going to be very glossy. And really, really simple idea. Just take the sort of first 20 car of the years.
Yeah.
Anyway, and photograph them in front of a building that was open, sort of an interesting building, not just like, an outside bog or a semi-detached house, but like a sort of something a bit more epic. So the cars start with the Rover P6 and run all the way up to the Renault 9. And some of the buildings, I think I looked at the list of buildings. I can't see it now, but I could have sworn on there was that lovely building we saw in Ipswich. Maybe not.
Oh, the mirror
Renzo
finish
Piano
one.
Yeah, maybe it's not on there. Maybe I imagined that. But it has got the Sainsbury's Centre at the University of East Anglia, the Ulster Museum in Belfast.
I hope they've got my favourite, what was Little Chef but is now Starbucks, up the A1 north of Grantham, which is the
I
giant
don't see it on the list.
Because that's
1981 is a lovely pairing. In fact, because they've seemed to have done the pictures, or at least some of them, because they're on the website here on the crowdfunding site. 1981 is Mark III Escort and the Humber Bridge.
I like one of those things. Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you which.
I'm not going to tell you which. I'll let the listeners decide.
Because your well-known hatred of suspension bridges of all types.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, this is it's called A Time, a Place. It's on crowdfunder.co.uk. The crowdfunding runs until this Friday. We have no affiliation with this, nor does Alistair, who wrote to tell us about it, but he is an architect. And he said he spends most of his time thinking about cars when he should be designing buildings. So this lands right in the middle of my personal Venn diagram. As the subject of interesting buildings, or at least 70s bungalows, has arisen more than once in your podcast, I thought this might appeal to you. It does. So there. Anyway, you go search that on Crowdfunder. And thank you, Alistair, for bringing it to our attention. Nice little project.
I want that to happen. I want that to happen.
Well, it's close. At the time we're recording, they are getting close to their 10 grand target. So
come on, people.
More than 80% of the way there. So it looks likely it will happen. And there's some pics on the crowdfunder that show you the sort of thing they're doing. There's a lovely one of Citroen CX.
Oh, gosh, I love that.
Yeah, Citroen CX. Well, exactly. I mean, who doesn't love a Citroen CX? Outside the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch, which is 1975. And the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch, I'm not familiar with, but it's a nice picture. The lettering, the illuminated lettering on the outside of the Queen's Theatre, I'm assuming is original, because it's very 70s in a brilliant way.
I like a 70s lettering. Well, that's why the Late Break Show. That's why the logo for the Late Break Show is almost was modelled on a sort of 70s TV chat show font-ish typography. That was the idea. That and the Muppet Show.
Also,
no, genuinely,
the Muppet. Yeah,
genuinely, that was my
Muppet
first
Show.
idea. I've got a sketch somewhere where I printed out the Muppet Show logo and kind of started sketching versions of it. I know.
To play the music. It's time to light the lights.
It's
on
so
the Late
good.
Break Show tonight.
You've got a twat who always forgets his tools and also his bedding when he goes camping with the kids.
I told you about when I was working on a TV show that was filmed at Elstree, BBC Elstree, which used to be the ATV studios up in Boreham Wood, and that's where the Muppet Show was done.
Was it?
And have I told you about this? You can still see there's an inset bit up on the wall, which is where Statler and Waldorf's box was. They used to sit up in a box complaining about the show.
Yeah, they were my favourites.
And you can still... Yeah, they're brilliant, aren't they? It was rubbish. I kind of liked it. Me too, more! It was actually done in a real sort of inset up in the wall above the seating, and you can still see that. And then we had a sort of writer's room on this show, and they'd stuck just a printed out thing that said writer's room, which partway through the day fell off when we started, and it's underneath. The real name of the room was the Muppets room, which I thought was quite appropriate. So they still honour the fact that the Muppets was made there with a small room upstairs. Anyway, I thought it was quite cool.
I love the Muppet Show.
A place where history happened. The Muppet Show was fucking great.
It was, and it was The Simpsons. It was better than The Simpsons, I think. I know it's one of them's animation and one of them's puppetry.
Yeah,
but I think it's that satire. It's that quiet satire where kids don't notice it, adults do. Great.
Yeah, very funny. Before we leave Book Corner, I just also wanted to say thank you to a chap called Rich Duisberg, who sent me a copy of his new book. Rich is the guy who wrote that Tales from Quality Control book a few years ago, which I might have mentioned.
Yeah.
About his experiences working in the car industry. And it's a cracking book, and it's full of great anecdotes about car factories and what goes on within them. So Rich sent me a copy of his new book, thank you, Rich, which is called Looking for the Real Weasel. And it's about a guy called Roy James. If you remember Roy James, he was one of the great train robbers.
Did you say Looking for the Real Weasel?
Weasel was his nickname.
Oh, okay.
Which
it's a great nickname.
I don't know quite why. I'll be honest, I haven't had a chance to read the book yet. But Weasel, I do know, was his nickname. Roy James was a racing driver, but clearly also a little bit of a wrong'un. And he was...
I've met a few of those.
Yeah. Well, yes, a lot of racing drivers we've met are wrong'uns in some way or other, but his particular brand of wrong'unness was that he was basically a robber, and I think he was the wheelman, or one of the drivers for the great train robbery, and eventually got done for it and went to jail. But there's not an awful lot about him in the public domain, so Rich set about trying to find out more about Roy James. So the full title of the book is Looking for the Real Weasel, Train Robber, Racer, Rogue. Who was Roy James?
I need to know more. I need to know more about this.
It's interesting. Well, once I've read it, you can have my copy, and then you could read it also.
Well, don't say that, because it makes me out to be a cheapskate who's not buying another book.
Well, I feel like, because I didn't. Rich emailed me, because we speak every so often, an email, and just said, "I've got a new book out. Do you want a copy?" And I said yes, but I'm now promoting it on the podcast, so it feels like.
Well, I'm still wading through volume 1 of 4 of Excellence Was Expected, the Porsche.
Oh.
Which
did we tell people about when I came to stay at your house and we just sat in your living room reading Excellence to Be Expected volumes for about an hour after we got back from the pub?
I don't think we did tell the public that. I think we just did it. But I mean, these, ladies and gentlemen, these are weighty, weighty books. In fact, I'm just going to tap one on the table just to give you an idea of the thickness. Hang on. This is one of them. You can feel that, can't you? That is, I'd say, maybe 2 inches thick. And that's one of 4 volumes. This is the most expensive book purchase I've ever made. I've been eyeing it up for a while by a chap called Carl Ludvigsen. Now, lots of Porsche people will know this book well. It's been reissued probably 4 or 5 times. But yes, if you get the chance to get the 4 volume one, volume 1 here is 1948 to 1971. I'm just enjoying all of the nerdy little changes, and that's because when we was at Lens Spouts last year, Richard, and I did do some work out there. I got to meet, and I can never remember how you say his name properly, Alawar Roof, I think. Mr. Ruff.
Yes.
And he was a lovely guy. and obviously a bit of an Illuminati when it comes to Porsche tuning and stuff. And the fascination, and he inadvertently bought for his first car, I think it was, with his dad, a broken 911 very early that turned out to be a 901 prototype that Porsche had taken the engine and gearbox out of, and it was just a rolling shell that had some minor accident damage. And he had it. He built an engine with his dad and got it back on the road, and I think he might have repainted it and stuff, but had no idea that this was a 901, and he's still got the car now. They've restored it, and it was on display there, and it's nicknamed Quickblau. And I had a little interview with him about the car, and he showed me around it and explained the significance of it. But just such an enthusiastic bloke, and that's why after going to that event, I thought I've heard about this book from Andrew Frankel. I've talked to Andrew Frankel about it from the Intercooler, and he's like, you've got to own this book. It's like it's the Bible for flat six. So I'm like, right, okay. So I've now got it, but it's 4 volumes. It's 4 volumes,
adding to it.
And I'm also a very slow reader, so I'm wondering. I think I will finish them before I'm 50, but it's not a given. It's not.
It's good to have a target.
I'll tell you what would be nice.
You will finish this book before you buy some comfortable slacks and start wearing a tie on weekdays when you don't have to go to work.
I'd like to finish these books in time to be able to buy a 911. That's what I'd like to do.
Ooh.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, they're quite valuable, those books, though, aren't they? Maybe you could sell the books and trade them in against a 911.
They are quite valuable. Just putting the word out on this podcast. When I've read them, if anyone really wants them and they've got a 911 that they really don't want, we can come to a bit of an agreement.
Good.
You see what I've done there?
Yeah, I'd love it. Someone traded a car for a book,
or if anyone's got a DP cargo, I would trade a DP cargo for it.
For people who haven't heard recent podcasts, that's the 944 shooting brake.
Yes,
you're talking about, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. What a great name, though.
I read. I think I was dipping into the first volume when I was at yours. And it's a dense book. It's like eating one of those incredibly dense chocolate brownies where you sort of go, oh, I'm enjoying this, but oh my God, I think my throat's closing up. Because even the photo captions have sort of got extra information in them. And you're kind of going, wow, there's so much in it. It's incredible. No amazing. Detail is left unexamined.
But obviously, if you're not interested in Porsche, I'd say don't buy it. That would be my book advice there.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, do you think so?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. If you don't like the sea, don't book a snorkelling holiday.
No, I disagree. I think if you don't like the sea, you have to face your fears, and maybe eventually you'll like it.
Right.
I think that's the way you should.
No, it's
if you're scared
interesting way of coming at it.
If you're scared of thunder and lightning, go out for a walk while it's thundering. I think that's what you need to do. Listen, I just wanted to... On that journey yesterday with the driverless ghetto Audi, that I still don't know whether it was driverless or not, I also came up behind an escort vehicle.
As in it was escorting a load type vehicle?
Yeah, and it has, in massive letters across the back of it, escort vehicle. Vehicle. And I know it's sad and silly, but... every time I read it, I just think the car should be an escort. And I thought, how many escort vehicles have there been over time? And
I bet there were.
That must have been back in the day. But the companies that do these escorting, if those of you don't know what this is, it's like a chaperone car, maybe 2 cars sometimes, for extra wide or cumbersome loads. It's usually things like locomotives being transported on a lorry or...
porter cabins.
Yeah, people's holiday homes.
Big porter cabins or holiday homes. Yeah.
We get a few boats around here. Really.
Planes they've forgotten to take the wings off.
Yes, those sorts of things. Yes.
Often Discovery 4s, I think, in recent times.
Yeah. I've seen one guy heavily vaping in a Honda CR-V with a Lumi vest on.
I mean, what qualities do you need from an escort vehicle?
I think you need to make sure
anything.
You don't crash into the vehicle you're trying to protect. That's definitely number one. But
that's sort of the onus is on the driver there, really, isn't it? I mean, you could have, I don't know, a Jaguar XJ12 if you wanted. I mean, ruinous on fuel, obviously, when it's stuck in first, crawling along behind a trawler on the back of a flatbed. But even so, it could be, stick some lights on the top of it, stick the sign on the back, but equally it could be a smart crossblade.
I think Tiff Nadell would be the ultimate escort vehicle person because he's incredibly impatient. I think we should get lots of retired racing drivers with no patience to do this, and the car should be like a race car with a sequential gearbox. You know, when race cars don't like to go slow, you drop the clutch and then go.
So one of those gearboxes that sounds like it's got rocks in it.
Yes,
rocks and something that whines.
Yeah, a really vocal diff, a really nasty kind of clutch and vicious drive, solid mount.
It's a historic racing car, so it's on carbs as well, so it's incredibly lumpy at low revs.
Oh, that could be good. Well, Tiff could do it in that reborn BRM V16.
Oh, God.
Can you imagine?
But then you've basically, at that sort of, at escort speed, you've got to keep dipping the clutch and revving it. So
which would be like, it would just kill it, wouldn't it? It would just kill it eventually.
Yeah, it's just...
And you'd hear Tiff
eventually,
shouting.
I think he'd run out of patience after 5 minutes, hijack the truck and just absolutely floor it until someone's yacht twatted into a low bridge.
Oh, this would be good. This could be... I was thinking about... Yeah, impatient race drivers doing escort vehicle duties, and then my mind wandered to you know, Strictly Come Dancing, when they do the routine for the points in the competition.
Yeah,
it's a prerequisite, I think, of a performer to have a happy face. You know what? You can't just do a good dance but with a totally straight concentration face, which is I think what I would do.
Oh, God, yeah.
You get docked points for that, don't you?
It's all part of achieving a higher score. Is part of the overall thing.
So I thought, and Strictly Come Dancing is one of the most popular TV shows in the country and possibly of the last half century. So I thought, maybe, is this a way of brightening up Formula One? You could have the anti-race face race. So you do a race, but you have to have a performer cabaret expression on your face at all times because you get docked time penalties if you've got an actual race face. You're not allowed a race face in the race. Are you following me?
Yeah, I think so. Would it perhaps be you could zone the track like they do with the DRS and stuff? That there is a zone where you have to have your cabaret face on, which would be the start-finish straight because that's where all the grandstands are and stuff. And so
that's a great
maybe
idea.
There's a bank of judges. There's Bruno Tonioli and they, I don't know, Rita Ora seems to be on a lot of stuff, and they're judging your face.
I think it's a top idea. So it's not just about being the fastest driver. You have to have a consistent cabaret face at key moments. Can you imagine getting into it? Can you imagine going into the pits and you've got to have a really artificial smiley face for that entire time that you're in the pits, and you've got to be waving and saluting.
You've got a persistent gearbox fault and you're really pissed off that you've dropped 3 places. You've still got to have a huge smile. Also, using the Strictly model, are all the drivers going to be heavily made up?
Yes, they've got those trousers that you pull up way too far. I don't know what you call them. And a cummerbund. It's a Nomex cummerbund.
Cummerbund?
Yes.
I don't think they wear cummerbunds on Strictly, do they? They just get in the way if they came loose.
Oh, I don't know.
Do they wear cummerbunds?
I don't know.
I feel like Matador jackets make an appearance every so often when people are doing the tango or something.
A Nomex Matador jacket with the sponsors discreetly down one lapel.
Yeah.
That could
right.
work. What about kind of white Walt Disney gloves as well?
Oh, yeah.
Which I think could be good. Trousers-wise, I don't know. Is it those high-waisted... I don't know what you call them, but they're just awful. I mean, I wouldn't do Strictly on the basis of having to wear the trousers. Not that anyone's going to ask me to do Strictly.
That would be your main barrier to Strictly, is the trousers. Do I have to wear the trousers? I'm afraid you do, Johnny. I'm out.
Yeah,
no,
honestly.
We'll give you £1 million, and you can pick what dances, and you can dance to Crockett's theme every week if you want. No, I'm sorry. Not doing it because of the trousers.
Can you imagine dancing to Crockett's theme?
A deal break. What I don't know what kind of dance would fit with that.
Incredibly slow.
Someone listening will know. It is quite well. It's sort of, but it isn't then, because when it kicks off, wow, it's a bit faster, isn't it?
Let me work out how I respond to that in an interpretive dance.
I was going to say, you've got a week to work out a dance routine to Crockett's theme.
Do you want me to record it?
My wife used to work on Strictly. I'm sure she's still got some of the dancers' numbers if you need someone to coach you.
I'd love that, as long as it was to Crockett's theme. Could you ask your wife also if this idea of mine, the sort of anti-race face race, is a thing? Does it have legs? Could it work?
Well, I mean, you might be asking her as you speak, because my wife does listen to the podcast.
Does she?
She sort of didn't for a while because she gets enough of my shit at home. But then she's got really into podcasts now. And rather than listen to the radio in the car, she's just podcasts all the time. And when she's basically got to the end of all podcasts and there's nothing left, she goes, stick Smith and Smith on. And I know this because every so often she comes in and she'll go, heard you talking about this on the podcast. And the last week, I think it was, she went, heard you accusing me of being a tight ass on the podcast.
Oh, no.
Shit.
You did, yeah.
Because remember when you came to ours that she got that leftover red wine and poured you a glass of it rather than, as I was hoping to, open a new bottle.
That's right.
And I was a bit like, I think that's now cooking wine. That was good, then actually. She also said that we were too smutty because we were talking about drawing rude things on banknotes.
Oh, really? That's not that smutty.
Yeah,
she hasn't heard some of the earlier material, clearly.
I know.
Which is probably for the best.
I'm not sure how I feel about this, that my wife now listens in again. So anyway, hello, hun. Hope your drive to work's going well.
I don't think my ex-wife ever listened to... I don't think she ever listened to it, which could have been a good thing. Could be a good thing. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. When you live with somebody, you don't necessarily want to hear their voice even more when you're in the car. I don't know.
No. I'd say no. Look, I got tailgated by a private ambulance last week, and I found it a bit disconcerting. Yeah. We've talked about...
as in it was being very aggressively driven?
It was... The guy didn't look aggressive, but it was so close to the back of my car that it's one of those moments where if you just dabbed the brake really lightly, there would be an instant impact because there'd be no way they'd be able to respond. It was that close.
Oh.
So I let it by. It was a Mercedes Vito, of course.
I was about to ask. Thank you.
Of course, and you need these details.
Yes.
And the guy driving it had a short sleeve white shirt on. I noticed. Yes. Are
you sure it was a private ambulance and not just a ska drummer on his way to a gig and he was late?
Maybe he's bought a private ambulance and maybe the band is called Private Ambulance.
Ooh, it's not a bad name for a band, that.
And the tour vehicle is an old private ambulance. So I
can't believe the penny only dropped for me like a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to someone about private ambulances that... So I was saying, once you realise what's in there, it's a bit grim, and I don't know why they have to write private ambulance on the outside. And then, of course, suddenly I was like, of course they do, because if they were in an accident, the emergency services would go, oh, look, there's just a black van, let's cut it open to get... And then they wouldn't realise there's a corpse in the back, so they sort of have to be labelled.
Yeah, that's right, so that if there's a road traffic accident, they know that there's some people already going to be dead because they were dead before the crash.
Like years ago, there was a guy we did something with on Top Gear who didn't have the use of his legs, and he had an adapted Golf R, I think it was.
Sweet.
And he used to get his chair into that, and then he would sit, and he had hand controls.
Yeah.
He had come to a studio recording, and he left, and he did like to press on in quite a quick car. And he was driving through the country lanes in Surrey, and it was a bit slippery, and he lost it and went into a ditch.
Oh, gosh.
And he had to get himself out of the car, but he couldn't get his wheelchair out. So he was just crawling, like dragging himself with his arms because he hadn't got use of his legs. And people stopped. And they were like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he had to go, "No, it's fine. This already happened. This is nothing to do with the crash."
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, because people were going, "Oh no, stay still, don't. Your legs aren't working." He's like, "No, they didn't. That's fine. I'm ahead of that." Yeah.
Bloody
so
hell.
that's the thing. You don't want a bad smash with someone who drives a Vito private ambulance aggressively, and then the fire brigade are like, "Oh God, this one's in a really bad way," and you go, "No, that happened a week ago."
Would it? Do you think it would? Do you think it would deter people from communicating or camping near you if you bought a private ambulance and turned it into a camper van? And then, but left it in all of the livery. So it had a pop top. It had a pop top on an awning, but it just said private ambulance on it.
I just realised private ambulance. They don't write private ambulance in reverse on the bonnet like they do with real ambulances, do they?
No,
there's no need because they don't need you to get out of their way, or except this guy in the Vito did. But
yeah, I couldn't work out if this guy in the Vito who was tailgating me, whether he was loaded up or whether he was late to load, as it were.
Mm.
Now I'm never going to know. I'm never going to find out.
No,
it was in Wiltshire.
Know how much urgency there is in the private ambulance world, but why did you leave me a message about large cars with tiny indicators?
Yes, it's because I think it's an increasing trend with new cars. There's a lot of new cars out there which have teeny tiny, almost too discreet indicators and sometimes brake lights. And it's like bucking the trend for when we used to have the Bentley Continental GT when that launched. It had that full width rear brake light that was absolutely huge. It was about 4 feet wide.
Yes, the central high-mounted stop lamp.
Yes, that.
Or CHMSL, as it seems to be called in the car industry.
That's right. And bizarrely, the 2CV of mine that I'm getting back on the road shortly, the previous owner fitted an aftermarket third brake light. I don't know why I'm laughing because it's really practical, but it's one of those it's one of those 80s or 90s motor factor ones, which doesn't work with the car at all, so I'm going to put an older one in there. But we've almost gone the other way. There's a lot of manufacturers building big, bulky cars with tiny little lights, and it reminds me of some people when you see a person sometimes who've got a big face, but they've got quite small features, like you've got a really big round face and tiny eyes. Or you've got a really big round face and you've got a little mouth, and you can't help but look a few times and go, "Oh, the proportions are unusual there, aren't they?" And I was following.
When you left me that message, my first thought was Discovery 5.
Yes,
because it's a big car.
That's a really big car.
The brake lights at the back, I think, are tiny but very bright because I guess they're LEDs. But the actual amount of space they take up in the rear cluster is tiny and out of proportion to their job, which is quite important.
I think they've gone because I know LEDs are bright and discreet when they're off, and that's good for packaging and not using, with old cars, not using too much battery power. However, I think they've properly undercooked it on the Disco. And one of the Teslas has got very tiny indicators. I think it's the Model 3. I was following that.
I think the 3 and the Y have got quite small indicators. They don't do anything fancy either. They're not scrolling or anything like that.
No, and I don't mind. I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind a scrolling indicator, but they're just too bloody small. At night, and if there's a bit of dirt on the lens, like British winter spec, really bloody small. It's got to stop, Richard.
Talking of LED lights, I remember being in the US a few years ago and seeing a 90s Mustang that had normal rear lights, but then it had got a wing on the boot lid, factory, but within the wing was integrated an LED third brake light, which must have been sort of quite advanced at the time. But I remember this car, when it braked, the mismatch between the two technologies, old school filament bulbs and LED lights, the third brake light came on noticeably ahead of the other two brake lights.
Really?
Yeah, it was. Well, I imagine it's because,
So it was stepped?
It was stepped. It was a real kind of bimp, like you could almost count like the gap between thunder and lightning.
That's quite cool.
It was, yeah, well, not really. I imagine it's just because you've got a more modern part stuck onto essentially a really old electrical architecture, and there's probably all sorts of cheapness within that caused that level of gap between the two types of bulb.
Is the 90s...
I've never seen it on any other car, but then I don't know how many other cars have got. I think quite a few cars sort of go to LED central lamps because I suppose they're easier to package.
I'm asking the listeners: is that Mustang the 90s? We're talking post Fox body, where it was very aero, and the backlights were quite big.
It was like really soft 90s design, but that was still on wasn't that still on the Fox?
It was bigger.
S197
it was a bigger car.
Or something
there's a few Canadian and American listeners who are immediately shouting now, going, "Listen, it's the one."
What are you talking about?
It did.
Yeah,
it
S197. Oh, spotter's badge for me. I remembered that.
That's good.
But that's the wrong car. Sorry, S197 is the first of the. When the Mustang went back to sort of a 60s inspired design.
Yes, that's 60s, the one that I locked.
That's S197.
The one I got locked out of with no clothes on my honeymoon. That one.
What?
Ooh. I've told you that story. Come on. I was on my honeymoon in a convertible of that shape Mustang. It was a V6 convertible that Ford kindly had lent us, and we were driving from like Scottsdale to LA to Vegas to San Fran and that over the course of about 3 weeks. And we were in Santa Monica by the beach on a very affluent street. I parked on a nice affluent street. Chops had gone down to the beach with like the beach stuff and was sunbathing. And I can't remember why I was faffing, but I was faffing. I know what I did. I don't like getting changed on beaches.
Yeah,
you just get sand everywhere.
Yeah.
So I got into my swimming trunks and stuff and my flip-flops in the boot of the car. But what I did, like a total prick, is I left the Mustang keys in my jeans pocket, put my jeans in the boot, and then I shut the boot and then walked round to the front of the car and realised that the keys for the car were in the trousers, not in the car, not in the centre console. And convertibles, you can't get into the boot.
Tonight on Classic Errors, Johnny shuts his keys in the boot of a car.
Yeah,
it's so easily done.
It was so quick to do and then so drawn out to resolve because my phone was in there as well, and so Chops was trying to get hold of me for ages. Apparently, on the beach, it was quite a long way up to the beach from where we were, so I didn't really go, and I didn't want to leave the car.
Yes, and it's a big beach as well.
It's a very big
chances
beach.
Of finding someone.
But the thing that I have told you this story, but the slightly embarrassing thing was, I think about 3 hours in, when we were still waiting for a guy to come, like a locksmith guy, to come from recommended from Folds. The sun had gone down, and I was wearing just swimming trunks. It stood at the side of the road, and it was starting to get a bit cold and inappropriate. And so a guy who we'd parked outside his house, this really nice house, obviously beach view, big place. He actually came outside and said, "Look, you've been there a while, and I gather there's a problem. Do you want to borrow a hoodie. So he came and gave me a hoodie and a can of drink. And then I waited out there for another hour or so. Meanwhile, he had a full barbecue party. And they were all pretty much just stood staring at me.
You should have seen him before I lent him the hoodie.
And yeah, let's just say it wasn't the best day of the honeymoon. The time passed by so slowly trying to get this guy to come. I ended up breaking into the car using a collection of extremely small airbags, inflation sacks. Yeah, it was fascinating to watch.
Wow.
He slid them into the boot and basically bowed the boot lid up just enough to be able to get a couple of hooks and things in. And then he could hook my trousers out and get the key out of the side of the boot lid without damaging the car.
Tonight on Trouser Rescue.
It was a really rubbish afternoon. It was a great morning and a shit afternoon. I want to say thanks to the guy. I'm sure I've said this story on another.
Why are you saying thanks to someone 20 years later?
I want to say thanks to the guy that lent me the hoodie and gave me a can of Sprite. Okay, thanks to him. He's a sweet, sweet guy. I'm sorry if I distracted your barbecue attendees by just being a weird British guy stood in shorts on the street in a convertible.
I thought you were going to say he came out and went, no, I gather there's an incident. So would you mind standing outside somebody else's house? Because I paid a lot to live here.
Quite the opposite. I think when he offered me the hoodie and I did take it, when a couple of hours later when this party was in full swing, he actually came out and said, look, you must be hungry. Why don't you come in and eat? But I felt so embarrassed going. They were all well dressed and stuff, and I was just going to go in swimming shorts on when I'd never even been to the beach yet. I still never went onto the beach. I still haven't been on that beach before. So
there we go. Anyway, that Mustang we're talking about, the sort of soft 90s one, was the SN95, and it was on the Fox platform, but sort of evolved version of the Fox platform.
And it was bigger, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe so, yeah.
I bet that's the ultimate Mustang for palming. I can imagine that's a really palmy
they're just
Mustang.
Awful, though, aren't they? Just awful.
Didn't they have the 3 spokes? It had the 3 spokes, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, well, they see it just contributes to the awfulness.
Yeah.
Nothing telegraphs awfulness like 3 spokes. Don't write in.
I would
totally serious. Or am I?
I think if I could design my own escort vehicle, I think it would be an Escort Mark 6 on softline 3 spokes.
Ugh.
Yeah, with a really bad light bar on the roof, like a dated light bar that drew so much energy, like the alternator was wheezing. Because instead of using modern LEDs, it was all really old, heavy-breathing halogens.
Right.
Such an interesting guy.
On that note, we should bring this into land. But before we do, I have 3 things to tell you.
Oh, gosh.
They are 1. Johnny has a solo YouTube channel. It's called The Laser Brake Show, in which he opens a needlessly specific repair shop for special edition 80s Fords. Fuck that up.
I thought it's like a Laser Quest. Johnny opens some sort of Laser Quest.
Well, you can do that next week. Second thing I've got to tell you is that I have various books out, and one of them is called Boring Car Trivia 4. Lots of excellent things about cars in there. I should probably remember some of the stuff that's in it to whet people's appetite.
You should.
It's too late for that now.
Well,
anyway,
do it from next week, can you?
Next week, I'll give it a try. The third thing I've got to tell you is, actually, it's a question. Guess who has the most petrol stations in Britain?
Well, it's probably Morrison's.
I thought it was probably one of the supermarkets, but no, it's actually Esso.
Is it? Still?
Not an amazing answer. You go, oh, okay, yes, they are a petrol station owning company. But yeah, it's Esso. It's fact. It's Esso, Shell, BP are the sort of big 3.
Yeah.
Esso have about 1,267 petrol stations. The biggest supermarket is Tesco, and they have 512. So, you know.
Oh, wow. That is deceiving.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I was going to get you an old Tiger Tokens T-shirt, actually, for your birthday.
Oh.
Yeah, I might I might get you one, but I'll get you one like
didn't.
triple XL new old stock.
Like that STP Oils t-shirt I've got that I bought in America. And it's a good t-shirt, but it's a very weird fit. It seems to be it seems to be made for narrow-shouldered but very gutty men.
Is it not flattering at all?
It sort of hoops out round the bottom, and it's like I tend to wear it under a shirt because otherwise it makes you look a bit odd. Anyway, by the by, this has been a bracing canter through God knows what, but if you enjoyed it, we'll do it all again next week. And thank you to everyone on our Patreon who's gone through a bit of a hassle because we said we were putting the price up. We telegraphed that a while ago.
Yeah.
But then we hadn't checked how you put the price up. You're not allowed to just crank it up for obvious reasons because you could start fleecing people.
We spooled it up.
So you have to create a new tier and then invite people to move over to the new tier at the new price. So thank you to everyone who's done that. The old tier still exists, but it just doesn't get the perks anymore, which is the show early with no ads and the show notes that come with each episode on a Sunday evening. So thank you to everyone who switched over. But also thank you to the really generous people who went, I used to pay more than you asked. And now, because of a quirk of Patreon, you're not allowed to do that once you go beyond the bare minimum amount. So we were asking the bare minimum, which is £1 a month, and you're allowed to give more. Once you go into the tiers and start asking £2.49, people have to give that and nothing else, or they don't get access to that tier. So we've created another tier that asks for a bit more money for people who really, really want to give us more money, but we absolutely do not expect that. We've just done it because we actually had complaints from people who wanted to pay more. So thank you to those people. You're very kind.
I got a lot of messages from people that kindly give us £5 a month, and they said, look, we're just we want to keep giving that, but we're locked out. How do we get back into the party? So I'm so sorry that we've had
well, you can now do that with our new Statesman tier, but that is purely for the people who complained that they wanted to hand over more cash than we asked for. So thank you to those people.
Richard's been cleaning the rotor arm all weekend. I've been dressing the points. It's now Patreon is fully fired up now, I'm sure.
Well, let's not get...
The choke is out.
Not get too boastful because I keep waiting for something to fall over. There are a few bits of fine-tuning we still need to do. But anyway... we will see you again on Friday for our new spin-off show On the Other Side of Things, and then again next Monday for more of this. But until then, thank you ever so much for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. I've got my cabaret face on, even though I'm driving really fast. Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate. Bye.
So you've enjoyed this podcast, but you've had a thought. Is there a way here today that you could show support? Well, you could join our Patreon. What wonders that it brings. Early shows and extra notes on that side of things. You could buy our merchandise. We've mugs and hats, but still no ties. One day we will make those pies, but in the meantime, guys, hey guys, like and subscribe, and maybe leave a nice review. Like and subscribe, we know you know just what to do. Like and subscribe, we don't want to take the piss. Like and subscribe, but we were told to ask for this. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
He's just put, I've just ended a phone call with cheers mate, thanks mate, bye, and then realised what I'd done. You two total tossers have ruined whatever brains I had left.